My name is Joe Polsini. This is my research presentation for Comms 520 for Dr. Kelly. I chose to do, in the topic of communication, I chose social judgment theory. I went back and forth on different theories that I liked, and I chose this one. I think due to the fact that I am in a field where judgment is put out there every day on the people I work with and by other caseworkers that might judge somebody just based on anything, which I feel is not right. I try to go in with an open mind. Social judgment theory is one of those theories that looks at people's judgment based on things that they hear, things that are perceived from the things they hear around them. It's been long. Social judgment theory is one that's been along for a long time within the psychology field, and it fits very well into the communication field as well, due to the nature in which it's focused upon. Social judgment theory attempts to explain how likely a person might be to change their opinions, or the probable direction of that change and their tolerance toward the opinion of others, and the level of communication to their position. Hopefully, through this paper, I have learned myself that personal judgments and how we perceive people just based on what we hear or what we think is not always correct and not always true. I did a lot of research and I looked at an article, and one of the articles I looked at discussed social judgment theory based on engaging students in communication. Through this, the research that was done, it looked at how students would react to other students' theories or opinions or feelings, and if the students would then react differently or change their stances or stay committed to their first response and first thoughts, even though they might be judged by their classmates and their peers otherwise. I found that very interesting, as being in high school and in college, you tend to feel peer pressure as a way to change our judgment of people, where we have, in some cases, you have people who are considered nerds or jocks or more important, more higher up, which I think social judgment theory then comes into play with social status and social class, and we are being judged by how we dress, how we look, and if we're being judged on that, does that affect us personally to the point that we change who we are, what we believe in, and where we stand, just based on what we hear about ourselves or what somebody might be thinking? We're also looking at how people's attitudes can change by a simple form of communication. The person receiving a message may take the message the wrong way. They may take their message in a way that's very negative when the message was meant to be positive or not threatening whatsoever. Judgment theory overall is something that has been around so long, yet it can be attributed to so many things that we see in our society today. Many of these things are concerning the youth of our society and how they communicate either effectively or negatively based on people's judgment. Like I stated before, peer pressure, which is often seen in college campuses, and looks at the premise of social norms as a social judgment, whereas the research shows that social norms, basically drinking, drug use, anything that's looked as a social norm on a college campus that is done by peers, due to the peer pressure of these social norms, does it become a negative aspect on the college student? I know from experience that when I went to college, I did not participate in these social norms. I went to a liberal arts school, and I pretty much went home every weekend. So I know I did not feed into these social norms and that peer pressure. Nor did I feel judged or treated any differently, even though I knew, and I still know today, that either in college and high school, I'm sure I was judged. But I was not one to let that affect me. More so today, I am, as far as my work policy and how I am in my job performance. I feel that I take a lot of judgment, and I take a lot of what people say and what people feel, and I use that to either fuel myself or to get myself down. It's very difficult sometimes um, to not think that someone's judging you on what you're doing. But I did find a good piece of literature discussing a piece of the theory in social judgment known as politeness theory, and it postulates the existence of a public self-image that each individual tries to protect. Everyone's trying to protect who they are, what they stand for, and are trying to be as politically correct, morally correct in society. And I feel that we are all trying to do that at some point or another, whether we think about it or not. Human beings in both oral and literate cultures use language to exert control over their existence. For decades, scholars have studied human expression in oral and written form to determine the effects of language as human interaction. These are all human interactions, are all linked to communication, and can be linked to social judgment theory in a way that when two people communicate, someone is more likely judging something about the other person, whether it be their feelings, thoughts, or their opinions. Upon further reading of literature, we see that social judgment theory can be a very polarizing topic and used in many different ways in the field of communication, at times using the form of opinions. The basic idea is that the authors in the one article that I read were looking at whether a presented opinion is acceptable nor objectable if it is perceived to be neither close to or far from the individual's own standpoint, which basically means that if someone receives an opinion on themselves from somebody else and it's not far off from what they believe, does this change their perception of the person who is sending the message? Throughout this literature, I've looked at different forms of social judgment theory and how they are relative and relate to the communication process. The main focus that I see is that we use our judgments of what we hear to ultimately form an opinion on something that we may have no discernible reason to be involved with. It makes important contributions to understanding communication and attitude change, explaining the ways in which listeners distort, judge, and respond to persuasive message on the basis of prior attitudes. Judgment theory can also be applied to almost every aspect of our society, in some ways even in more unconventional occupations. In one article I looked at surveyor viability and the application of social judgment theory, and it followed the principles of social judgment theory to show that the importance of how utilizing like home condition surveys and recalibration of survey results to take account of a surveyor's policy, training requirements, and everything like that. So if you're judged on your work, do you take that into account and get more training if it's not good? It can help individuals in the surveying business to look at others' results and help assess residential property conditions. So really, social judgment theory is used in all different aspects of life, socially, business-wise, personally. And it's just social judgment theory it's very interesting, and it can be used in almost any profession, culture, or part of society. And I think that if we cannot communicate effectively without the fear of insulting someone or hurting someone's feelings, then we need to find better ways as individuals to communicate. Throughout all the research and articles that I have read, it was clear that social judgment is something that will always be around. It's forever changing, depending on the person who is doing the communicating and the person who is doing the listening. It's our job as the communicator, and as other times as a listener, to not judge the person we are speaking with based solely on what we hear or what we perceive and ultimately think they are trying to present. Judgment can have very negative effects if we allow it, and I learned a lot through reading this paper. I apologize, Dr. Kelly. I'm not a very good presenter or public speaker, so that's all for my presentation. Thank you very much. Have a blessed day.